My father abandoned me at 14 for my brother. Years later, I show up at his family party, successful, and I destroy him in front of everyone with the truth he never expected to hear. I'm 29 years old. I work as a senior manager at a consulting firm, and I make more money than my father ever saw in his life. And I need to tell this story because what my parents did to me when I was 14 basically destroyed me for years, but also, in some twisted way, turned me into who I am today. The thing is, my parents, Kenneth and Deborah, decided that between my brother Ian and me, he was the one worth keeping when things got financially difficult, and that decision changed everything forever. I guess I should start at the beginning. When my dad still had his business, and we were, a normal family. Like, I played basketball, got decent grades, nothing extraordinary, but I wasn't a disaster either, and my younger brother Ian, who's 2 years younger than me, was always the brainiac of the family. From the time he was little, that kid got straight A's in everything, read advanced books, participated in math Olympiads, all that stuff. My parents were proud of him, obviously, but back then I still felt like they were proud of me too. You know what I mean? My dad would come to my basketball games. My mom was a nurse and worked crazy shifts but always found time to help us with homework. It was a normal life. Everything went to shit when I was like 14, almost 15. My dad had a distribution business. He wasn't a millionaire or anything, but we were doing well. We had a decent house, 2 cars, vacations every year, comfortable middle class. But it turns out his business partner, a guy he'd trusted for years, basically betrayed him in the worst possible way. I'm not going to go into all the legal details because I don't even fully understand them, but the guy diverted funds, forged documents, left the business with huge debts, and disappeared. My dad lost everything, literally everything. Had to declare bankruptcy, we sold the newer car, had to move to a smaller house in a worse neighborhood, and my dad, Kenneth, and fell into a brutal depression. And when I say brutal depression, I mean the man basically stopped being my father. He spent all his time in his room, didn't look for work, cried sometimes, yelled other times, and started becoming bitter with everyone but especially with me. My mom became the only one bringing money into the house with her nursing job, doing extra shifts, night shifts, whatever, and she was exhausted all the time but never complained, just kept going and going. And I tried to help. I really tried. I looked after Ian when my mom wasn't there, cooked when I could, cleaned the house. But none of that seemed to matter. What did matter, apparently, was that Ian kept being an academic genius despite all the chaos at home, while my grades started dropping a bit because, it's kind of hard to concentrate on algebra when your dad is yelling at the walls and your mom gets home at 2 a.m. and leaves again at 6. I went from getting B's and some A's to getting C's and some B's. Nothing terrible, but definitely a drop. And my parents, especially my dad, started constantly comparing me to Ian. Like, my dad would say things like, "Look at your brother. He understands the importance of education. He's going to go far. And what about you? Are you going to be mediocre your whole life?" And he'd say it in front of Ian, in front of my mom, in front of whoever was there. Then came the basketball thing. I loved that sport. It was the only thing keeping me sane in the middle of all that disaster. It was my escape, my way of letting off steam. And I wasn't bad. Actually, I was on the varsity team at school, and we had a chance to go to regionals. But one day, my dad just said, "Basketball is over. You need to focus on your studies." And when I tried to argue, he yelled at me that he wasn't going to support a bum who just wanted to play games, while his brother worked hard for his future. My mom was there and said nothing, just nodded her head, and that was what hurt the most, that she didn't defend me, either. They banned me from all extracurricular activities. Everything. Basketball, the chess club I sometimes went to, even hanging out with my friends after school because, according to my dad, I needed to be home studying like Ian. And the irony is that Ian didn't even need to study that much. That kid was naturally intelligent. Everything came easy to him, while I had to work twice as hard to get barely decent grades. But that didn't matter. I was the failure, and he was the star. And every day that became more and more obvious in the way they treated me. Things got so bad that my grandmother, Alice, my dad's mom, came to visit us after like 6 months of not seeing us because, I guess, my mom finally told her how bad things were. My grandmother was always direct, no filter, like that 70-something-year-old lady who says exactly what she thinks without caring about anything. And when she saw the situation, how my dad treated me, how I'd basically become invisible in my own house, she said something that changed everything. She said, "Look, Kenneth, Deborah, you can't support 2 kids in this situation. You're barely surviving. Why don't you send one to Donald and Sharon? They could never have children. They have space. They have stability. They could help. Donald and Sharon are my mom's brother and his wife. They live like 3 hours from where we were, in a smaller but nice town. And yeah, they'd always wanted kids but never could. Some medical thing I never fully understood." And I heard this conversation from my room. The door was slightly open, and my heart started beating really fast because I thought, okay, maybe this is my way out. Maybe I can leave and be in a place where they don't constantly compare me to Ian, where they don't make me feel like garbage every day. But then I heard my dad say, well, obviously Ian stays here, he has potential, he's going to get scholarships, he's going to go to a good university, he needs to be near the best schools. And my mom, my own mom, said, yes, Connor can go with Donald and Sharon, maybe a change of environment will do him good. And that's when I understood, that's when I really understood, that to them, I was expendable. Not the son worth keeping close, not the son worth investing in, just the one they could send away without thinking twice. I moved in with my uncle Donald and Aunt Sharon. Like a month after that conversation, my parents presented it as something temporary, like, it's just until we stabilize, but we both knew that was a lie. I packed my clothes, my stuff, which wasn't much because we'd had to sell a ton of things when we lost the business, and my dad didn't even help me load the boxes into the car. Ian cried when I left. He was like 12 years old, and I think he didn't really understand why I was leaving. Or maybe he did understand and felt guilty. I don't know. I told him everything was going to be okay, but honestly, I didn't know if it was true. The first months with my uncle and aunt were weird. Not bad, just weird. They tried hard, maybe too hard, to make me feel welcome, but I was angry, resentful, depressed, all of it at once. They enrolled me in the town school, and I was the new kid in the middle of the school year. I didn't know anyone, had no friends, and I missed my old life even if that life was shit. My grades kept being mediocre. I slept all the time. I was basically going through the worst time of my life and didn't know how to get out of it. But Donald, my uncle, is a special guy. He works at a tech company, something related to software, makes good money but isn't flashy. He's super calm and patient, and instead of pressuring me like my dad did, he just gave me space. He'd ask how I was doing, invite me to do things without forcing me, and when I told him I liked basketball but my parents had forbidden it, he said, well, there are no stupid rules here. If you want to play, play. And Sharon, my aunt, is an elementary school teacher, and she's like the sweetest and most understanding person I've ever met. She didn't try to replace my mom, never did that, but she listened when I needed to talk, made my favorite food without me asking for it. Little things that meant a lot. Little by little, and this took like a whole year, I started to change. I joined the school basketball team, made friends. My grades improved because my aunt and uncle hired a tutor to help me with difficult subjects without making me feel stupid for needing help. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel that maybe I wasn't the problem. That maybe what my parents had made me believe about myself wasn't true. My uncle would say things like, Connor, you're smart. You just need to find your rhythm. And the craziest thing is that I started to believe him. During all this time, contact with my parents was minimal. They'd call me every 2 or 3 weeks. Superficial 5-minute conversations. How are you? Fine. How are your grades? Fine. Okay, see you. Bye. Ian called me more often and told me about his life, about how he'd won some academic competition, about how my parents were super proud and I was happy for him, really, because he's my brother and I love him. But it also hurt to hear how much my parents celebrated every achievement of his while they didn't even ask about my life in detail. I graduated high school with a 3.5 gigapascals, which isn't spectacular, but considering where I was coming from, it was pretty good. And I got a partial scholarship to a decent university. It wasn't my dream school, but it was good. And my aunt and uncle were so proud they cried at my graduation. My parents came to the ceremony, sat in the back, took pictures, but most of the time they spent talking about how Ian, who was about to graduate middle school, already had a full scholarship guaranteed to a prestigious university. At my own graduation party, which my aunt and uncle organized at their house, my dad spent more time telling people about Ian's future than about my achievements, and I just smiled and nodded because what else could I do? College was where everything really changed for me. I studied business administration, joined clubs, networked like crazy, got internships every summer, and discovered I was good at it, like really good. I had a knack for understanding people, for solving problems, for leading teams, and I realized that my value wasn't in being an academic genius like Ian, but in being someone who could connect with others and make things happen. I graduated with honors, got a job at a pretty well-known consulting firm, and started making real money, like more than my mom made as a nurse. The following years were a constant climb. I worked like crazy, 60 to 70 hours a week sometimes, but I loved it. It fulfilled me in a way nothing else had. They promoted me to senior consultant, then to manager, and like 2 years ago they gave me a senior manager position with a salary that when I saw it in the contract I almost fell out of my chair. We're talking high six figures, plus bonuses, plus benefits. I bought my own house, an incredible place with 3 bedrooms in a city across the country, and I finally felt like I'd gotten somewhere, that I'd proven my dad was wrong about me. During all this time, my relationship with my parents remained distant. I'd see them at Christmas sometimes, at important birthdays, but we never talked about anything real. Ian, on the other hand, had had a different trajectory. He graduated from his prestigious university, but had trouble finding work in his field, something about a saturated job market, and ended up accepting a position that paid less than expected. Then he tried to start his own business, something related to educational technology, but was struggling to get funding, and when he told me about it, I, without thinking twice, invested money in his project because he's my brother and I love him, regardless of what happened. Like 6 months ago was my grandmother Alice's 75th birthday. My grandmother organized a big party at her house, like massive family reunion with cousins, uncles, everyone. I flew in from where I live, arrived in a nice suit, because I was coming straight from an important work meeting, driving a rental car, but high-end because, well, I could afford it. And when I got to the party, my family's reaction was almost comical. People who hadn't seen me in years looked at me like I was a different person, asking me about my work, my house, my life, and I answered casually, but honestly, about my achievements. My parents were in shock, like, visibly in shock. My dad, Kenneth, saw me, and his face was one of genuine disbelief, and he came over and said, "Connor, I can't believe how good you look. What are you doing now?" And I explained about my job, my position, without bragging but being honest, and he just shook his head like he couldn't process the information. Then he said, and this is the part that made me explode. Internally, he said, "Wow, who would have thought? I guess you did better than we expected. I guess you did better than we expected." Those words kept spinning in my head all night. My mom, Deborah, was also surprised, but at least tried to hide it, asking me about my life, saying how proud she was. But I knew it was all facade because if she really was proud, she would have been present all these years. You know what I mean? Ian was happy for me, genuinely happy, and that meant something, but it wasn't enough to erase years of feeling like garbage. At one point in the evening, my dad tried to have a conversation with me alone, took me to the backyard of my grandmother's house and said, "Look, Connor, I know things were difficult when you were young, but everything turned out well in the end, right? You're successful, happy. So maybe what we did was the right thing." And that's when something in me broke, or maybe fixed itself, I don't know. But I told him, "The right thing? Dad, you sent me away because you decided I wasn't worth it. You constantly compared me to Ian. You made me feel like a failure. You banned everything I loved, and then you sent me to Uncle Donald like I was a package you didn't want anymore. And you know what's most ironic? That Uncle Donald and Aunt Sharon, in a few years, gave me more love and support than you gave me in my entire life. My dad tried to interrupt me, but I kept going. I told him, "You know why I'm successful? It's not thanks to you. It's in spite of you. Every achievement I have, every good thing in my life, is because I got up from the shit you put in my head for years, from the idea that I was mediocre, that I wasn't going to get anywhere. And while I was building my life, what were you doing? You kept wallowing in your self-pity for losing your business over 10 years ago. You kept being the same bitter and toxic person who destroyed his own family because he couldn't handle his failure." My dad's face was priceless. A mix of shock, rage, and maybe shame, I'm not sure. And he said, "How dare you talk to me like that? I'm your father." And I answered, "No, Donald is more my father than you. He was there when I fell apart, when I thought I was worthless, when I needed someone to believe in me. You were only there to remind me how disappointing I was. So don't come to me now, after years of silence, to celebrate my success as if you had anything to do with it." Obviously, the party got tense after that. My mom was crying. My dad left early with an excuse that he wasn't feeling well, and I honestly felt nothing. Neither guilt nor satisfaction, just emptiness. My Uncle Donald pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, and I told him yes. That actually I'd never been better. And it was true in some twisted way. The next day, when I was already back at my hotel getting ready to fly home, my mom called me. She was furious, yelled at me about how I dared to humiliate my father in front of the whole family, that I didn't understand how difficult it had been for them, that I should be grateful they raised me, educated me, gave me a roof. And I told her, "Mom, you sent me away when I needed you most. You explicitly chose Ian over me, and never, not once, apologized for that or acknowledged the damage you caused. So no, I'm not going to apologize for finally telling the truth." She insisted I should ask for forgiveness, that I was destroying the family, and I told her something I never thought I'd tell my mom. I said, "You destroyed this family years ago when you decided one of your sons was worth more than the other. I'm just pointing out the obvious." And I hung up. A week later, I sent them a long email, probably too long, where I explained in detail everything I'd felt for years, every comparison that hurt, every time they made me feel invisible, every achievement of mine they ignored while celebrating every little thing Ian did. I told them I didn't hate them, but I also couldn't keep pretending we had a normal relationship when clearly we didn't. I explained that Ian and I had our own relationship that didn't involve them, that I was going to keep being part of his life because he's innocent in all this. But as for them, I needed distance. My mom called me like 2 days after that email, crying, telling me I was right, that they'd made terrible mistakes, that she was sorry. But the thing is, I don't know if I believe in apologies after so much time anymore, you know? They're words, just words, and they don't erase years of damage. I told her I appreciated that she finally acknowledged what happened, but that the damage was already done, that our relationship probably was never going to be what it could have been. Today, I see my parents maybe once a year at unavoidable family events, and we maintain polite but superficial conversations. Ian and I talk regularly. His business is finally taking off with my investment and other funding he got, and I'm genuinely happy for him. He's told to me multiple times that he always knew what our parents did was wrong, that he carried guilt for years, and I tell him it's not his fault, that he was a kid. Next week, I'm going to surprise my Uncle Donald and Aunt Sharon with a paid vacation to Europe, something they've always wanted to do but could never justify the expense. It's my way of saying thanks for saving me, literally, because without them, I don't know where I'd be now. Probably not where I am, that's for sure. And that's enough, I guess, knowing that despite all the bad, there were people who saw me when my own parents decided not to.